Welcome back to Minimalist Terrain. I'm really excited about today's video. We are going to be using some very advanced techniques, very advanced material. We're going to be looking at polymer clay. Now, it's a very versatile material. As I say, it is quite advanced, and the reason why I'm bringing it up quite early on in the piece is because, like anything, the more you do it, the more you practice with it, the better you get with it. So far rather start with it early on and do some simple pieces, build up your skill level, practice, and then later on, when we're getting into more advanced builds, we'll be able to call on this stuff to do some of the nice detail work. Now, I see an awful lot on message boards, people asking or talking about polymer clays or air dry clays, what are the benefits of each. Polymer clay is a kind of clay that you bake and it becomes like a plastic. It's a very permanent thing. Air drying clays is more of a traditional clay that you would use in sculpting. The upside to it is you don't have to bake. The downside is because there is that water content, as it dries it can crack and become quite brittle and it loses its shape. Depending on what you're after, both of them have their uses, but in terms of fine modelling, polymer clay realistically is the kind of stuff that you want. Part of the reason why I'm doing this video right now is, one, because there's something in particular that I want to make with it. Two, the kids are also into crafting and they have been asking about this stuff and they need it for some of the projects they have in mind, so I may as well get it out of the way. They can refer back to this video and then not annoy me with lots of questions. I'll just go and tell them to watch it. But obviously, yes, for you guys, getting it out of the way, getting your feet wet with using some of this stuff, really to my mind is, it's a very much another weapon in your armoury. One thing that I will say, because there is practice, because it is sculpting techniques which do take practice, before you use this, go and grab yourself some plasticine. Cheap enough from dollar stores. The texture is a little bit different, but if you practice with plasticine first to make any kind of shape that you're after, if it doesn't work, squidge it down, try it again. If it does work, and take your time with it, be patient, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Once you are happy with your plasticine one, then pull out your polymer clay and recreate what you've just done. Okay? Because once you've baked it, it's permanent. With that said, I will set up with the basic tools, and any other talky bits I'll do while I'm working. So we have a variety of tools and materials. First thing, obviously the clay. Second most important thing is some blocks of wood. Doesn't have to be wood, but it does have to be something that you can use as an elevated cutting surface. Now the reason for that is when you cut clay, it does push out of the way and it will try and push in front of the knife blade. So you don't want to be cutting like that. You actually want to be cutting straight down. That's why we need that elevation. If you just did it on the tabletop, your knife blade's going to be at an angle always and you're going to end up having to cut like that. So a straight chop down. That's probably one of the most important tips. Your cutting surface, this is baking paper, because we're going to end up baking it, so you may as well put it straight onto the paper, then that can slide onto your baking tray. It's not going to stick to your cutting surface and you're having to try and pry it off and ruin the look of your model, deform it, things like that. So straight onto baking paper. What else have I got? Obviously I've shown you the knife. These are some formers. This, if you do any Crafting with EPS foam, you'll recognise, is simply a ball of tin foil. Now EPS crafters use that and press it in to the foam to get a rock texture. And I've got another one here which is a roller that I've made. All of those techniques that you can use, that you use for texturing EPS foam, you can use on clay. Just remember, EPS foam does have quite a bit of resistance behind it, so you're probably used to having to really press hard. Clay is far more pliable, so it's a nice light touch when you're doing it. Okay, you don't need to force it, otherwise again you're going to deform things. I'll grab some out and we'll show you a very quick one. Okay, first thing, it says to manipulate it until it's nice and soft. That is now nice and soft. Press it down as much as you possibly can to round about the sort of thickness that you want. Another piece of baking paper. And here is where the second piece of wood comes into it, and the mallet. Nice and flat. Comb. Let's do some nice gentle waves down there. You guys would probably be more inclined to use a wire brush, but there is no need for anything as harsh on polymer clay. So that was the fine close together bristles, and then straight, firm, down, cut, and then pull away from the piece. Okay, so we're leaving that all intact. I want this to be around about 40 mil, which is about there. Pull. Come on. Pull. Come on. Pull. And there you instantly have the makings of a door. I'll hold that up a little bit better so you can see the texture on it. Now, it does look a little bit rough, but once it is baked, it cleans up essentially exactly like plastic. So all of the techniques that you use for cleaning flash off the joins on miniatures or filing things down, you can use on this stuff. So this I will bake now, and I'll show you the cleanup on this particular piece in just a second. So this has now been baked for the prescribed amount of time, and it's pretty solid. As I say, once it has been baked, cleanup is very, very easy. You can just scrape it exactly the same way you would with a plastic model, just as if you were getting flash off it. Or fine grain sandpaper. And it comes down really, really easily. It doesn't look quite straight in that corner. Just neaten that top up. Makings of a door. I'll use that in another video. One quick tip. because depending on the clay you have, you can find your tools starting to get a little bit clogged up. Now this is Sculpey. It's far more like a clay and a plasticine than some of the other stuff. Fimo is very plastic and you don't have the same problem. Sculpey, this stuff, does tend to stick to your blades and tools, and it can clog them. Dead easy, just dip it in water, clean it off with a towel, you're good to go again. Now this one, I have a former, and I'm going to keep this in place. Before, you saw me deliberately pulling the clay away and doing vertical cuts. Because I've got a former here, I'm going to do it pretty much like you were doing baking with scones or something like that, and just going around pop that out. Again, those edges will clean up with a file once it's been fired. I can freehand this a little bit and just trim it down ever so slightly more. One of the other good things about having it on baking paper, obviously, is the fact that I can actually rotate the piece rather than having to try and work around it. We'll lift that out of the way. That's pretty good. That will clean up nicely. So there's a base for a large miniature, and we're just going to texture it the same that you would with EPS foam. So there's our ball, and just nice light touches to rough it up. You can see I'm just doing it with my fingertips. I'm not having to press in at all. And obviously, depending on what you want your base to look like, you can use whatever you want to create that texture. It'll take very, very nicely. There you go. One very... Oh, can you see that properly? One very quick and easy textured base. Now, because I have something special in mind with this, I am actually going to cheat a little bit, because I know what I'm doing with it next, and I am just going to add a wee bit more into the centre because I want that centre built up. Joining it together, just use my knife to bring it in. I'm not worried too much about the look of this, because, as I say, that centre part is going to be very much covered over in the piece that I'm going to be making with it. Alright, but that's blended in reasonably well. There is another piece ready to go in the oven. So this one is out of the oven. I've given it a bit of clean up around the edges. Now I'm going to turn this into a cane pile of rocks or something like that. So these are just stones from the garden, and for the larger ones we'll use the hot glue gun and get them stuck on. A nice upright one in the middle. Then get the rest around. Smaller ones I may well attach with super glue. I'll get on with this and report back. So there you have it. Rocks have been added, big pile. A little bit of builder sand and PVA just to blend it in with all the rest of the scenery I've got. That can dry and then it's off for a paint job. Cane, standing stones, maybe it's something of religious significance. Maybe it's something different. I made another textured base for the second part of the surprise model that I'm going to be doing. But for this, we need a little bit more support. So what I've done is I reclaimed some copper wire from an old electrical cable, and I've twisted it together. Because the second part of the model is going to be more upright, it recommends that you use an armature. So, if I bend that out like that, and then twist that together, that's probably about the proportions that I'm after. One very quick body armature. So let's get it into its proper position and get it connected. Is that going to fit? Yes, it is. Bring that out just a little bit so that there are some shoulders there. Press it in, position it back on the model a little bit so that it's not so much of an overhang. We'll lift that up so you can see it a little bit properly. And we've kind of got it in the classic superhero landing pose. Why not? And now I'm going to start covering it over. I'll probably speed this bit up just while I work. So basic construction is complete. Now we just need to smooth things out and texture it. Now this is one of the things that my daughter was specifically wondering how you go about doing, because whenever she's used it before she's always managed to end up with finger marks and things like that all over the piece. So wet your knife blade and you're just going to use the flat of it and just smooth it over. And going back over means that if there's any joins or gaps or anything like that that you're not happy with, then you have the chance to make good. The other way of smoothing over is to have something like this, which is just a smooth metal roller, and you can just roll. I'm not going to go too overboard because I'm going to be adding separate texture, but I do want some of the socket lines very much prominent. Final part, textured roller, and we'll go all over just getting texture to all of those pieces. This one is out of the oven now, can you see that clearly? Alright, an awful lot more sturdy. You'll have noticed in the video that as I was trying to texture it, because it was still malleable, it was bending all over the place. But now it is far easier to work with, and we'll give it a clean up the same way that I did the door earlier. Few rough raggy edges, maybe it's a little bit too much for what I'm after for this miniature, but it does come up very easily with just light sandpaper. Not a problem at all. I'll get on with this, clean it up, add some texture to the base and get it painted. There you have it, the joys of polymer clay. We will be revisiting this material in at least one more video, and we'll see this door then. There's loads more tips and tricks to pass across, loads more applications, loads more things that we can do with it because it is so versatile. But in the meantime, I have two brand new pieces. One, yeah, it's a piece of scatter terrain, very quick build, just polymer clay stones, bit of sand and a paint job. Didn't take long at all. But if you hadn't already guessed it, this can turn into one of these. I am not dissatisfied with it. It shows me that I'm out of practice, but all told, that probably would have been about an hour just in construction, and then there was about a half hour's baking time plus a paint job. But not that much at all. So, get the plasticine, start practicing, practice. Once you're happy, get onto the polymer clay, make something a bit more permanent that's going to stand up to the test of your players, poking, prodding, throwing it around, things like that. I hope you have found this of some use. Thank you for watching. As ever, please hit like and subscribe and notification bells and share with other people that you think may find it of some use, and I will see you in another video.